WHGE 95.3 FM coming up, the Open Eye. Hey, Sherry. Glad you joined me.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression on our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host and third eye optometrist, Patrice Gibbs, here to get that third eye open. Yes, indeed. Got plenty for you today. And as we always start off, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. Yes, indeed. And we do so right here. All right, let me get our disclaimer out the way here. Where are we? There we go. All right.
The views and opinions expressed on Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
All right. Let's get them going here. All right. We're going to start here today. Wilmington. Wilmington has a very rich history. Culturally rich. Some of music's greatest come from right here in Wilmington, Delaware. Like the great jazz teacher, Boise Lowry. Or the tenor saxophone player, Charles Robinson. And we had people like alto sax player, Len Foster. My mentor, Ralph Morris. One of my greatest friends and supporters, the late great Billy Norwood, who is a dancer and scat singer. And of course, did I say Papa D. Allen, Grammy Award-winning percussionist with Ward from Wilmington. And we had the great Abdul Rashid Yahya, who's very special to me because Uncle Rashid was my mother's stepbrother. They didn't play that step stuff, and he's my mom's brother. And of course, the late great Clifford Brown. Thursday of last week, Clifford Brown would have turned 95 years old. Let's talk about Wilmington's favorite son. Clifford Brownie Brown. He wasn't just another horn player. He was a phenomenon, a composer, an innovator, and a perfectionist whose tone carried both the warmth of love and the fire of revolution. He grew up right here in Wilmington, Delaware. As a teenager, he studied under the legendary Robert Boise Lowry, the man who trained half a generation of Delaware's finest musicians. By 15, Brownie was already making the trumpet talk. By 18, he was performing in Philadelphia clubs, holding his own among the best of the best. One night, fate stepped in. Dizzy Gillespie came to town for a gig, but his second trumpet player, Little Benny Harris, didn't show. Hey, Steve. Dizzy turned to Boise Lowry and asked, "You got anybody who can fill in?" Boise didn't hesitate. He said, "Yeah, Clifford." That night, the young man from Wilmington stepped on stage beside a giant and never looked back. Dizzy was so impressed, he spread the word across the jazz world. "You gotta hear this kid from Delaware." Brown's influence were legends. Fat Girl, Fats Navarro, Bird, of course, Charlie Parker, and of course, Dizzy himself. But Clifford didn't imitate, he elevated. He took the complexity of bebop, gave it soul, and turned it into something deeper. He was one of the leaders in what would become known as hard bop. By 1954, he and drummer Max Roach had formed one of the greatest small groups in jazz history, the Clifford Brown Max Roach Quintet. Their recordings for Anarchy, Studying Brown, Clifford Brown and Max Roach, Brown and Roach Incorporated, still stand as lessons in brilliance. Clifford's tone was pure, round, golden, and alive. He could make a ballad sing like a prayer or light up a jam session like a thunderstorm. And while many of his peers were consumed by addiction and chaos, Clifford lived clean, humbled, and focused. Then on June 26, 1956, tragedy. A car crash on the Pennsylvania Turnpike took Clifford's life, his wife LaRue, and pianist Richie Powell. Whoa, that's not right. No, Clifford Powell, Richie Powell, his wife, and of course Clifford. The jazz world went silent. Miles Davis said, "We lost the best trumpet player who ever lived." But death couldn't quiet his horn. Every note Clifford Brown ever played still lives in the breath of every musician he inspired and every trumpet that lifts his voice toward the sky. And right here in his hometown, that legacy plays on every year at the Clifford Brown Jazz Festival. Yes, indeed. They said brilliance needed a bottle. They said pain was the price of passion. They said to play like Bird, you had to bleed like Bird. And then Clifford Brown stepped on stage. No smoke in his lungs, no poison in his veins, just breath and brass and God-level control. His trumpet didn't cry from chaos, it sang from clarity. Every note he blew was clean. Like sunlight through the clouds of that smoky room. Sonny Rollins met him after the storm, fresh from the wreckage of addiction, and said, "Yo, this cat can play all that music and he's clean?" Brown became a beacon, a brother made of light. He shattered the myth that madness made music, that genius had to suffer. No. Clifford proved the opposite, that peace could swing harder than pain, that focus could rip louder than any fix. His horn spoke of joy, not junk, of mastery, not misery, When that crash took him at 25, jazz lost more than a man. It lost a mirror. Because Clifford Brown showed us what we could be if we let the love of the art be the only high we chase. He left this world too soon, but his sound never died. It still echoes in the halls, in the headphones, in the heartbeats of every musician who learned the music. The music itself is enough. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Binta, all right, I see you. My name's not Patrick, Binta is Patrice. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Yes, D. And listen, I want to be real clear about something here. Because I don't want those pretendians, excuse me, I don't want those pretendians, those people that want to deny Africa, get confused and think that I am in support of their stance. Now those people that run around talking about Pan-Africanism is dead. Okay? Don't get it mixed. All right? I do not support that. Born and raised a Pan-Africanist. Third, fourth generation. Here's fifth, let me see. Okay. Yeah, fourth generation. Had to count it up there. Got a little, wait a minute. There we go. No adjustment there, but that's all right. Let me tell you something. The African American experience stands alone in human history. Be clear about that. It's not merely a chapter in the story of America. It is the blueprint of America's soul, written in blood, sweat, brilliance, and survival. No other people on earth share this origin story, this forced creation of identity from ashes of stolen ones. Every other group that arrived on these shores brought with them a homeland, a language, a culture, and a memory. African Americans were stripped of all of it, and still forged a culture so powerful it became the heartbeat of the nation. We're a people without precedent. We're the only non-immigrant group in the United States. We didn't come chasing opportunity. We were dragged here in chains. We were not refugees seeking safety. We were captives commodified for profit, packed into slave ships like livestock. Millions perished before even reaching these shores. Those who survived faced the death of another kind. The killing of the name, the tongue, the gods, the family, the tribe. From that nothingness, something miraculous happened. Out of destruction, Black America created itself. The plantation became both a prison and a forge. Spirituals became coded messages of freedom. The cadence of African tongues rebirthed itself in blues, jazz, gospel, hip-hop. The most original musical languages on the planet. The pain became art. The grief became power. And the silence became song. The irony is this. Black Americans are the most American people there are. Let me say that to you again. The African in America is the most American people there are. We have no hyphenated homeland to cling to. Our lineage doesn't trace back neatly to Ireland or Italy or Germany. Our roots are in the red clay of Georgia, the cotton fields of Mississippi, the back streets of Harlem, the battlefields of Selma, the movements that forced America to live up to its own promises. Our culture wasn't imported, it was invented here. The African American is the indigenous soul of the American experience. Our story, born of bondage, became the moral conscience of this land. And we struggle for justice. Every expansion of freedom, every sound of protest and praise carries our fingerprint. No other people in this country have endured such systematic dehumanization, the horrors of slavery, the daily terrors of Jim Crow, the lynch mobs, the redlining, the segregation, the prisons built in our neighborhoods like new plantations, all meant to break us. And yet, we remain the most forgiving, the most creative, the most spiritually resilient people this land has ever known. It's not a testament to America's greatness. It's a testament to our endurance. We're not people of extraordinary. If we were not people of extraordinary grace, the rivers of this nation would have long run red. So when the question arises, do black people deserve reparations? The answer is not only yes, it's how could we not? America has paid everyone else. She is wrong. But the descendants of those who built the wealth of this nation still carry generational debt of that unpaid labor, the trauma of that history, and the consequences of policies designed to keep us behind. Reparations aren't charity. They're the overdue invoice of history. The miracle of us. That we can still sing, still build, still love, and still dream is proof of something divine. By all rights of human nature, we should be bitter and vengeful. Instead, we continue to lead the moral conversation, to birth culture, to define what it means to be an American. That's not just resilience, it's resurrection. We are not a tragedy. We are the miracle of America still doesn't deserve. Stay woke. That's right, Steve. Reparations now. Hey, Vaughn, I see you, bro. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye. All right. Let me tell you about the legacy of racism in everyday systems. And something that a lot of us don't realize. Because when people say racism is in the past, they're usually talking about the kind that wore a hood or carried a whip. What they overlook is the racism that wears a suit, carries a clipboard, and hides behind standard procedures. Much of what we accept as normal in modern America, from tripping to traffic, didn't just happen by coincidence. They were shaped by racist ideals, laws, and economic structures designed to exploit, exclude, and control black people and other marginalized communities. It's primarily aimed at us. Let me give you a breakdown of these seemingly ordinary aspects of American life. that were born out of racist intent, and how they still function as quiet enforcers of inequality right now. I'm going to play tipping. Tipping is a legacy of unpaid black labor. Tipping in America is not about generosity, it's about exploitation. They don't do that in other countries. You go overseas and you offer a tip, they look at you like you're crazy because they are paid. See, after the Civil War, newly freed black workers were often hired as porters, waiters, and servers, but denied actual wages. Employers argued that tips from white consumers were sufficient. It was a loophole that allowed white businesses to continue benefiting from unpaid black labor. And that legacy lives on. Today, tip workers, disproportionately black and brown, are still paid some sub-minimal wages, often as low as $2.13 an hour. Racism literally built the tipping system in the American economy. Literally built it. Insurance, the redlining risk. Insurance rates were and still are tools of racial discrimination. In the 20th century, companies routinely charged higher premiums or denied coverage in predominantly black neighborhoods, labeling them high risk, simply because of who lived there. That same discriminatory logic drove redlining in housing, ensuring that black families paid more for less or couldn't buy at all. Today's studies show that black drivers still pay more for car insurance even when their driving records are identical to white drivers. Racism was built into the actuarial tables. It's part of American life, and it goes on. Like with the bar exams, SATs, and the myth of merit. Standardized testing, whether for college admission or professional certification, was never neutral. The SAT was actually created by eugenist Carl Brigham in the early 1900s, who explicitly designed it to prove the supposed intellectual inferiority of non-white, immigrant, and lower class students, specifically blacks. The bar exam followed the similar logic. After black people began entering the legal profession during Reconstruction, states implemented testing requirements to raise standards, which was code for limiting black competition. These tests still reflect class and cultural biases that reward privilege over potential. And when we enter court, we are still looked at, no matter what our position is in court. We are still, as soon as a white person, a bailiff or whoever, sees a black person, whether they're in a suit or whatever, they are still considered the defendant. A defense lawyer sitting at the defense table in suit and tie will be asked to move away from the table until his lawyer gets there. And that's whether he's defense or prosecutor. If he's a prosecutor, they know, what are you doing sitting at this table? I saw a judge come into court, came from the gym, stopped in court to look over some papers before he put his robe on. The bailiff rolled up on him and demanded that he get down from there and be arrested. It was the judge. Damn. And we have credit scores. How many of us dealt with those? It's nothing but modern redlining. Credit scores were introduced in the 1950s as supposedly objective measure of financial responsibility. But the data used to calculate them excluded communities of color. Black people who are already denied loans, mortgages, and credit cards. So the system proved that black people were a financial risk simply because it measured access denied by racism. Today, a low credit score can block housing, employment, even access to health care. It's not about financial literacy. It's about structural exclusion. On education. Public universities were once meant to be affordable until integration. As black students began attending predominantly white institutions, state slashed public funding, forcing schools to raise tuition. The result, higher education became a gated community again, accessible mainly to the wealthy and disproportionately white. Student debt now functions as a new form of indenture, locking millions into the cycle of poverty for daring to pursue opportunity. Yeah, I remember when we moved to North Wilmington and some of the reactions that I got as a teenager from my white neighbors. The main thing was they wanted to check if you actually belong here. Even when I caught the bus driver, I would sometimes get on the limited bus. They discontinued them because of the blatant racism and all the trouble that it caused. Because see, the limited bus didn't stop in the black neighborhood. It bypassed that. On the way in town, it didn't pick up. On the way out of town, it didn't drop off. So when I would get on the bus, and that was usually on my way out of town, in the North Wilmington, outskirts of Wilmington, the bus driver, black and white, would put their hand over the coin box or the money box or whatever it was. And they, this is the limited bus. As if I couldn't read, well read. And then, like I said, the neighbors I would have to deal with. I can remember coming home from a job interview in a suit and tie. The neighbor in my building ran up to me. I had on a suit and tie. And asked if I was there to put in the carpet. Who in the hell put your carpet in? What company are you dealing with when the people show up to put your carpet in, come in a suit and tie? It must cost a hell of a lot of money. Homeowner associations were born out of segregation. After the Supreme Court banned explicitly racist housing covenants, HOAs emerged as a race-neutral way to enforce the same exclusionary goals. Homeowner association rules about neighborhood standards often targeted cultural expression, from banning certain high hairstyles to dictating lawn ornaments, while using fees and bylaws to keep low income, and thus often black people, out. Suburban control with a polite smile. Just recently saw a young lady in one of these neighborhoods with one of these homeowner associations. Her son touched a tree. And they want to fine her enough to confiscate her property. Damn. Then you had traffic jams. Highways are tools of segregation. You know, Americans' urban highways weren't built to connect people. They were built to divide them. In the 1950s and 60s, federal urban renewal projects deliberately ran through thriving black communities, displacing hundreds of thousands. It happened right here in Wilmington. Yeah, the freeway that goes up between Jackson Street and what's that, and Adams Street. To up that black community. Today's traffic congestion reflects those same racial planning choices. Long commutes for working class black people push the city outskirts while white suburban routes remain prioritized. Even infrastructure remembers what racism drew its line. See, racism is the blueprint. These systems didn't just happen to have racist side effects. They were designed that way. The fact that they still function today, largely unquestioned, is proof that racism doesn't always need slurs or violence to do its work. It just needs systems that look normal. To dismantle racism, we can't just call out the obvious. We have to audit the ordinary. Because in America, even the everyday was built on inequality. Listen, my children of the sun, until we question the world we've inherited, we'll keep living by the rules racism wrote. Stay woke. Stoke and I. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is The Open Eye. Yeah, I hear it all the time. I always hear this. I hear it all the time. I just wish the race stuff would stop on both sides. Both sides? What both sides are you talking about? I like to thank Sister Mia for pointing this out. Like I said, what both sides are you talking about? Are black people creating legislation to make white existence harder? Are black people denying loans to white applicants because of their skin color? What both sides? Are black police officers out here killing unarmed white people simply for being white? Did black people build a system designed to privilege ourselves while punishing others? What both sides? Every time black folks speak honestly about racism, someone chimes in with, we need to stop this on both sides. But there are not two equal sides here. Black people experience racism white people perpetrated. Black people speaking about pain isn't divisive, it's survival. See, when black people show prejudice, it might make white people uncomfortable, but it doesn't threaten their safety. When white people show racism, it can cost us our jobs, our homes, even our life. We can't sell water without being harassed. We can't shop without being followed. We can't sit in on our apartments eating ice cream without fearing police violence. White folks don't walk around through America wondering if they'll make it home because they're white. Black folks play Russian roulette with our lives every time we step outside because we don't know which smiling face hides the snake. If you want the race talk to stop, tell white people to stop being racist. That's it. That's the message. Now here's what's wild. Racism isn't just morally bankrupt. It's financially bankrupt. White America spent centuries oppressing black people and in the process robbed itself of trillions of dollars. Yes, trillions. Economists estimate that systemic racism has cost the U.S. economy over $16 trillion in the past 20 years alone. That's lost GDP, lost innovation, lost opportunity, all because of discrimination. Every door slam in a black face shuts out potential growth for everybody. When you deny black children quality education, you don't just hurt them, you rob the nation of future doctors, engineers, and entrepreneurs. Excuse me. When you realign black neighborhoods, you don't just block wealth for black people, you shrink the consumer base and tax revenue for everybody. When you over-police and mass incarcerate black men, you don't just destroy black families, you remove millions of workers from the economy. And yet, white America, particularly working class white Americans, keep supporting the very systems that hurt them most. Finding that out today. Let's talk health care. America is the only wealthy nation without universal health care. Why? Why? Because when programs were proposed that would help everyone, white voters were told black people will benefit too, and they voted against it. Now white families in Appalachia and the Royal South ration insulin, drown in medical debt, and die from preventable diseases, all to make sure black folks don't get cured either. That's not strategy. That's self-destruction masquerading as supremacy. Oh, the same thing happened with labor rights. During the New Deal, unions built the middle class. And when integration came, white workers turned on the very system that protected them. They backed right-to-work laws that gutted unions, stripped benefits, and froze wages for a half a century. Why? Because they didn't want to share power with black workers. Now their children earn less, work longer, and retire poorer. Education, same story, same story. Rather than integrate schools, white voters defunded them. They sabotage public education because equity might help black children too. Now their own kids graduate undereducated, over-indebted. They shoot themselves in the foot and then complain about the limp. Damn. Racism is bad for business. Anti-black racism has cost America trillions, I told you that, in productivity, innovation, infrastructure, and stability. While America has been kind into believing that black advancement equals white loss, but the truth is the very opposite. Every time black Americans are lifted, the whole nation rises. Instead, the powerful whisper the same old poison. Those people are taking your tax dollars. And while working class whites fight imaginary enemies, billionaires laugh all the way to the bank. Lyndon Johnson said it best. If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pocket for you. That was true in 1964, and it's still true now. Let me tell you about the cost of spite. White Americans voted for law and order and got mass incarceration. They voted for small government and got crumbling bridges, poison water, and dead-end jobs. They ignored environmental racism, and now floods, fire, and climate collapse hit their own communities. They built the cage and found themselves inside. Painted yourself into a corner. Racism didn't just enslave black people, it enslaved white America's common sense. It blinded a whole nation to its collective self-interest. And what's the bottom line? Anti-black racism isn't just evil. It's expensive. It drains wealth, weakens democracy, and destroys the moral and economic fabric of this country. White America has paid a high price to stay on top. Poorer, sicker, and more divided than ever. It's time for white America to do the math. Look at your bank accounts, your medical bills, your student debt, and ask yourself, has this really worked out for you? Because the truth is simple. The people who profit from racism aren't the white folks struggling to make the rent. They're the ones who keep all of us, black, white, and brown, too divided to notice who's really robbing us blind. Racism is a white problem. Until white America decides to solve it, white America will keep paying the price. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is The Open Eye. Let's tear down the myths. They say black people don't like to work hard. And that's something. After centuries of back-breaking labor, after building a nation from the soil up, we're still called lazy. How is it that the same people who work the fields from can't see in the morning to can't see at night, who picked the cotton, laid the rails, built the White House itself, are now accused of not wanting to work? Let's get real. We were never lazy, we were enslaved. We worked for free. And maybe that's the real problem. Now that we're no longer working for free, we're suddenly lazy. See, what they call lazy is really liberation. What they call unmotivated is really uncompromised. Because we've learned the hardest lesson of all, that labor without ownership is just another form of bondage. From the plantation to the factory floor, from the fields of the South to the steel mills of the North, black people have been the backbone of American labor. We were the workforce before there were unions. We were the infrastructure before there were highways. We were the economy before we even counted as citizens. And still, through all that exploitation, and we built beautifully. Oh yeah, we built our own towns like Mon Bayou, Mississippi, Rosewood, Florida. We founded banks, insurance companies, and schools when no one else will lend or teach us. We birthed innovation. The traffic light, the gas mask, the iron board, the elevator, all from black minds. We created cultural industries from jazz to rock and roll to hip hop, fashion to film, that the whole world profits from. And today, according to U.S. Central Bureau, black entrepreneurship is one of the fastest growing sectors in America. We are still hustling, still creating, still redefining what it means to work on our own terms. So let's tear down that myth once and for all. We're not lazy. We're just no longer volunteering for our own oppression. We traded in the chains for creativity, the fields for freedom, and the wit for wisdom. We've proven time and again that black labor built this nation, and black excellence continues to sustain it. So next time someone says black folks don't like the work, ask them this. If we were lazy, how did we build this country? Maybe the truth is they just missed the days when we worked for free and go to hell. WHGE 95.3 FM. You know, it's something we got to talk about because history is repeating itself and it's uglier this time. SNAP benefits, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, had never been cut off in a government shutdown, not once. Not under Bush, not under Obama, not even during the long, drawn-out shutdowns that left federal workers scrambling to pay rent. But the only two times this country has come close to literally taking food out of people's mouths, 2018 and now 2025, had both been under one man's so-called leadership, the Orange Disaster. In 2018, the USDA had to scramble like never before. They paid February food benefits weeks early just to stop millions of Americans from going hungry. It was chaos. But they managed to hold the line. Now, 7 years later, that same line is breaking because the government is warning that millions may not receive their November SNAP benefits at all. Let that sink in. We're talking about families trying to survive on about $6 a day, now being told there's no funding. Meanwhile, billionaires are still collecting tax breaks. Corporations are still hoarding subsidies. And ICE is still spending millions on tear gas, cages, and cruelty. This is not about balancing a budget. This is about who they believe deserves to live with dignity. When the same government can find billions for bombs, says it can't find a few dollars to feed the hungry, that's not a deficit, that's a moral failure. When they can write blank checks for corporations but hesitate to feed children, that's not fiscal conservatism, that's cruelty, plain and simple. And make no mistake, the cruelty isn't accidental, it's deliberate. It's a feature of Trump's brand of politics, a politics that treats poverty as a punishment and human suffering as leverage. The wealthy always gets rescued first. Banks, airlines, corporations, those are always a plan for them. But when it's the working poor, the single mothers, the seniors, the disabled, the veterans, children, suddenly we're out of money. And funny how that works. Well, let's call it what it is, selective compassion and institutional cruelty. Because when the richest nation on earth can afford war but not welfare, it's not about money, it's about priorities. And for those of you that got your priorities mixed up, that voted for this. I heard today that white people in the South receiving SNAP benefits did not know they were receiving SNAP benefits. See, because it was called a surplus or something like that. It was generations ago. And that mindset stayed with them generations after generation. of families that remained in poverty for generations. And locked themselves into poverty like I explained to you. Now that they found out this surplus, these subsidies are the same SNAP benefits, the same welfare that black people are getting. Same thing. The same subsidies or welfare that black people weren't allowed to receive until the 50s and 60s. Got your priorities all screwed up, voted for this. It isn't leadership, it's more bankruptcy. And it tells us everything about the values driving these people. They talk about responsibility, but they mean control. They talk about freedom, but they mean privilege. They talk about America first, while putting its most vulnerable last. So the question becomes, how long will we let this cruelty masquerade as policy? How long will we let greed dress itself up as governance? Because when a government would rather starve its people than tax its billionaires, the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. Yeah. Move right along. Let's see. Yeah. No, I'm coming to that later. Okay. Let's move right along. There's a couple of things here I got to get to before I get out of here. Now, you know, time flies. But I got you right here, an open eye. All right, all right. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah. 35 to 37% of white people are on SNAP. Thank you, Sherry. All right. Now, I'll move to a kind of a different thing here. I don't know how many of you saw this video of this emotional cop in Baltimore. A Baltimore police officer's encounter with two young men spiraled out of control after he chased one of them through the city streets. And when the video of the incident surfaced online, things quickly went from bad to worse for him. In a now viral video, it shows what appears to be the tail end of a verbal encounter between two men and a police officer. What happened was he came up, as they do, harassing these young black men, and when they knew their rights, and one of them, well, both of them actually, wouldn't give him their ID, his privilege, his emotional privilege kicked in. Once again, America has witnessed what happens when power, prejudice, and impunity merge behind a badge. In Baltimore, Officer Robert Parks didn't just lose his temper, he weaponized his patrol car, turned it into an instrument of terror, and nearly committed vehicular homicide in broad daylight on camera. Let's be clear. Excuse me. If any civilian had done the same thing, stomped the gas pedal, chased another person through city streets, cut across traffic, crashed through a fence, and nearly ran someone down, they'd be in handcuffs before the engine cooled. The charge? Attempted vehicular homicide, at minimum reckless endangerment, and assault with a deadly weapon. There would be no suspension and pending investigation. There would be an arrest, a mugshot, and a court date. But when a police officer does it, the system suddenly slows down. The language shifts from crime to incident. The headlines soften from attack to disturbing footage. The same act that would define a civilian as a criminal becomes in uniform a momentary lapse of judgment. My ass. There's a double standard that fuels the rage and distrust in black communities across this nation. The same officers sworn to serve and protect often act as judge, jury, and executioner, particularly when the person they're confronting is young, black, and free enough to say no. Officer Patrice didn't just chase a man, he hunted him. He saw disobedience, not humanity. And that's the core of the problem. Too many officers see non-compliance from a black man as a threat that justifies deadly force. It's that plantation mentality dressed up in police blues. The man who ran wasn't running from justice, he was running for his life. And when the car finally crashed, it was more than metal hitting a fence. It was a collision of arrogance and accountability. Karma caught up, but justice still hasn't. Accountability means treating this as the crime it is, not an internal affair. It means stripping away the badge and applying the same laws that govern everybody else. Because until police face the same consequences as the people they brutalize, there is no justice. Only protection for the protected and punishment for the powerless. Baltimore streets have seen enough trauma, enough rebuilding trust statements, enough polished apologies from chiefs and mayors. What the people need isn't more words, it's equality under the law. If a civilian driving full speed toward another human being is called a criminal, then a cop doing the same damn thing must be the same. Anything less is not justice, it's permission. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Permission to be criminal. Last week, I mentioned the fact that, what's his name, Sean Grayson, the murderer on Sonia Macy, was on trial. The verdict came in. Yeah. They called it second-degree murder. But what it really is another reminder that in America, even when you kill a black woman on camera, even when you threaten her life and carry it out, the system will find a way to soften the blow. Sonia Macy called the police for help. She didn't call to die. She didn't call to be judged, disrespected, or executed in her own kitchen. Doing everything I can to keep my language clean on the radio here. But that's exactly what happened. Former Deputy Sean Grayson walked into her home, threatened her, "I'll shoot you in your effing face," and then did it. And now, after all that, a jury looked at that video, heard that threat, and decided that what he did wasn't premeditated murder, but a lesser crime, as if Sonia's life deserved a lesser measure of justice. The familiar script of justified fear. Grayson's defense followed the script we've seen too many times before. He feared for his life. A black woman standing in her own kitchen saying, "In the name of Jesus," and walking toward a pot of water somehow became a threat to a trained officer with a gun, a badge, and authority. He saw boiling water as a weapon, but didn't see his own rage as the real danger. And because he wore a uniform, the system bent over backwards to rationalize his fear, not Sonia's humanity. Let's not overlook what Sonia's father pointed out. He was in 6 police departments in 3.5 years. That's shameful. That's not a career. That's a red flag factory. A man cycling through departments that quickly shouldn't have a gun, a badge, or authority over anyone. But policing in America is built to recycle its worst to protect the uniform, not the public. Police departments quietly pass along problem police officers the way other industries pass along resumes. And every time someone pays the price, this time it was Sonia Macy. The jury's decision, second degree instead of first, feels like a compromise with conscience. They couldn't pretend he was innocent, but they couldn't bring themselves to call it what it was, cold-blooded murder. Even in conviction, there's leniency. Even in accountability, there's cushion. He won't face life in prison, just up to 20 years. Maybe less with good behavior. Meanwhile, Sonia's family faces a life sentence of grief. A $10 million settlement doesn't restore her life. It just puts $sign on a system that keeps killing with impunity. This isn't just about one bad cop. It's about a culture that trains officers to see black existence as a threat, to meet humanity with hostility, and to rationalize their violence as procedure. Every excuse. He feared for his life. She was acting erratically. He followed training. It's part of language designed to sanitize murder. And each time a jury buys it, another uniformed killer learns that accountability has an escape clause when it comes to murdering black people. Sonia Macy's name now joins the long list of those who were killed after calling for help. Not because they were dangerous, but because someone decided they didn't deserve to live. If we keep accepting lesser charges, we'll keep getting lesser justice. And lesser justice in America always means no justice for all. Stay woke, children. So and I. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. I know I'm going over here today, but I feel the need to get this out. When a reporter recently asked whether all this pushback against Donald Trump could make things worse, whether it might provoke him into sending the National Guard into Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson didn't flinch. His response wasn't political spin, it was moral clarity. Could you imagine, as a descendant of slaves, my ancestors would have had that same rationale? Let's not fight against the Confederacy. Let's just try to get along, and maybe one day they'll give us freedom. Nowhere in the history of America or the world have marginalized people sat silent and idle and been able to achieve justice and liberation. That right there, that's truth stripped of pretense. It's the same truth that thundered from a Birmingham jail in 1963 when Dr. King penned a letter to the so-called moderates who urged him to slow down the weight to not provoke the very power structure crushing his people. Dr. King wrote, for years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the air every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has always meant never. We must come to see that justice too long delayed is justice denied. From slavery to Jim Crow, from redlining to mass incarceration, the oppressed have always been told to be patient. It's the polite language of oppression. It's a velvet glove version of shut up and take it. Don't march, don't kneel, don't riot, don't provoke. They tell the oppressed to temper their resistance while never asking the oppressor to temper their brutality. We're told to wait for the system to work, while the system was never built to work for us in the first goddamn place. Every generation has its course of caution, whispering that progress must move at the pace of the comfortable. Yet freedom is never arrived on a slow timetable. It comes through agitation, confrontation, and courage, not appeasement. Oppression doesn't recede because we whisper. It retreats only when we raise our voices so loudly that the walls of power begin to tremble. Silence isn't safety, it's surrender. Every time we silence ourselves to avoid making things worse, we hand another inch of our dignity to those who feed on fear. Let's remember, if enslaved Africans had waited, there'd be no emancipation. If civil rights workers had waited, there'd be no Voting Rights Act. If Chicago's youth had waited, there'd be no Mayor Brandon Johnson to speak this truth. Yeah. Brandon Johnson's defiance echoes across centuries of struggle. It's the same spirit that fueled Harriet Tubman's footsteps, Ida B. Wells' pen, and King's final sermon. It reminds us that waiting for justice is not patience, it's paralysis. We waited long enough. No more delays, no more caution in the face of cruelty, because as history has proven time and again, justice is not a gift of the powerful, it's the claim of the persistent. There's no open eye. Imagine, if you will, a nation known for its ideals, liberty, equality, justice for all. A nation where truth was once a virtue and leadership was a matter of honor, not ego. But something happened on the way to progress. Somewhere between the hashtags and the headlines, the people lost their appetite for truth and developed a taste for spectacle. This is America, not the land of the free, but the land of the influence, where conspiracy theories get more traction than compassion, where every lie has a live stream and every outrage is brought to you by your local political sponsor. Here, reality is whatever the loudest voice says it is. And the truth, well, the truth has been voted off the island. Enter a time when decency is dismissed as weakness and cruelty is mistaken for strength, where men who once preached morality now kneel before power, and citizens were once vigilant scroll themselves to sleep. This, dear listener, is the America that struggled through the looking glass and woke up inside its own illusion. Enter Donald J. Trump, too big con man, television huckster, a denizen of gaudy casinos and smoke-filled back rooms, who conned himself into the biggest job of all. Here's a guide through a world of his own creation, a world where words like truth and lie no longer had meaning, where man's darkest instincts are given license, and where things like human decency and tolerance are relics of a bygone day. Mr. Donald Trump, a man with one foot in his mouth and the other in the twilight zone. See, family, this isn't just satire. This is prophecy disguised as parody. Because when we let lies become leadership and hate become policy, we step through a door we may not know how to close. History has seen this episode before. It begins with laughter and ends with lessons too late to learn. So open your eyes, children of the sun. Stay vigilant, stay conscious, and whatever you do, stay woke. Stay open up. All right. I'm Patrice Gibbs. This has been Open Eye. I want to thank you all for joining me. I want to thank you, especially my good friend Sherry, for so many things that you exposed me to that helped make my show today. I hope you learned something, because I learned something before I got here. And as we always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This has been Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Thanks for joining me. All right. No, don't think I forgot. Gas, global African supremacy. The world was a much better place when the black man ruled.